Did you hear? Overwatch added the new hero called Professor Wen. The professor is, of course, a temporal duchess who uses her magic Allen wrench to fight crime. Her abilities include a primary fire that deals 10 damage per second to enemies on screen, a passive ability that increases enemies' respawn times by 5 seconds, an ability that increases or decreases objective progress by 10% at maximum, and her ult pauses the game for the enemy for 10 seconds. Now, those numbers are of course silly, but imagine you tweak them just right, to the point where it wasn't technically overpowered or underpowered. Now, is it balanced? Sure. Is it fun? Obviously not. This would be the absolute worst. Like, when you're making a character, you have to start out with the premise that people want to play the game. And designs like that would just make it so there's less game for everybody. It would just be disrespectful of everybody's time to have a character so designed around stopping the game, slowing down matches, reducing the skill cap and skill floor for everyone involved, and making everything feel like a waste of time. Oh, hi, Mei. I'm confused. Yeah, Mei sucks. I don't mean she's bad competitively or bad in casual play or doesn't get picks or plays, and I don't really care about that stuff right now. What I mean when I say Mei sucks is that I think Mei's design makes Overwatch a worse game for everybody, Mei players included. The goal of Overwatch, unless you're the world's most cynical pro player, in the end is to have fun. Winning's a part of that, but for most of us it's just a step on the path to having a pretty good time. To that end, I'm not really going to address balance, because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really matter if she's on curve or meta-defining or trash tier. I also don't really care about character design with regards to personality, voice lines, that's all important, cool stuff. And as annoying as I find her, I'm okay with those choices, and variety is cool, and I'm sure people with irritating voices appreciate the representation. What I want to discuss is the way that Mei's mechanics and playstyle negatively impact the core gameplay of Overwatch. Of course, this will include a lot of my own personal preferences and opinions, but I'll try to be upfront about those preferences and any assumptions I make with regards to her abilities. And if you disagree, that's totally valid, and I'd be interested in hearing opposing takes. Let's start with Mei's basic mechanics. Her primary fire is an ice spray with a short range, decent damage that slows down targets. Now, while I personally dislike weapons that you don't need to, aim, especially on a TPS, it's not the worst. For as direct a comparison I can make, let's take the Pyro from TF2. Their primary fire is also a short-range spray that deals decent damage. Pyro has plenty of their own problems, which I'll make a video on later, but I can only do 2 tangents at once, so getting back. Team Icy Hot also both features a secondary effect as a result of this primary fire that makes one tense and challenging, and the other lame and boring. For Mei, the ice slows down your target to a crawl, and this sucks twice. First, it reduces the need to aim even less, and makes Mei's skill ceiling even lower. For your opponent, it lowers the skill ceiling for them too by negating their ability to use their movement in the fight. The result is 2 players both not interacting with the game that much, and whoever wins, they both get shortchanged. Let's compare that to the Pyro's secondary effect, Afterburn. In TF2, the duration you're exposed to the flamethrower increases the amount of time you take damage over time afterwards. Now, how does this affect interactions? Well, first, since it scales the time in the flamethrower, you can't just puff once and run away. You're encouraged to stay and fight. Second, since it deals pretty decent damage eventually, up to 80 in TF2, which would be more like 125 in Overwatch, it can get kills even when you die, encouraging you to go for more risky plays that might not work out for you, but could definitely help your team. For your enemy, it's pretty nasty. It makes them immediately know there's a ticking clock on their survival. You have to act fast, kill the Pyro, get extinguished, run away, get some healing, something, because the pressure's on. It makes the situation tense but survivable. Knowledge of your options in the game matters and can be exploited by both players to raise their skill ceilings and engagement. Compared to that, slowing them down is so boring and reduces the impactfulness of the interaction. Now, debuffing DPSs are still cool, and it's mostly going to get worse from here, so it's not the worst. I give it a C tier ability. Okay, her secondary fire is actually pretty good, and I don't mind it that much, except for a recent change they made, but for my own sanity, I'm going to assume they revert this because, dear God. But overall, it's not bad. I give it an A-. Okay, deep breath. I can do this calmly. This is the worst thing ever. All it does is stall, It stops the game. It makes each game of Overwatch less Overwatch and more watch a blank wall for a few seconds. This is not fun. It stops progress of objectives, stops fighting. I guess supports like it because you can stand there for a second slapping your Ryan's ass full of healing. But goddamn, this is the most boring effect. Sure, it can be used in creative ways occasionally, but realistically, it's primarily a tool to stop gameplay instead of enhance it. And on top of that, it's one of the few tools that can actively harm your own team. Well, I understand that if you design a whole game around making sure nobody ever griefs, you're going to lose that battle, but this is just giving a machine gun to a chimpanzee-level recklessness. The amount of times I've died or had my ult negated because of my team's incompetent Mei... Regardless if it's intentional or not, being hindered by your own team really sucks. It makes the environment super toxic. Nobody likes being screwed over by the person you're supposed to be working with. F minus minus minus. Here's another one that's just an absurd, stop playing the game, everybody. And you and your opponent both just don't press the keyboard for a few seconds. If it weren't bad enough, she can still cap while doing this. And it's nuts because she just pauses the game for everybody and shifts the objective a bit and makes it less game time and more sit around and think about video essay about how much this hero sucks time. And to top it all off, it's crazy selfish. Compare it to Soldier's Heal, where it can work with the team, and he gets to still shoot, and people can attack him, and suddenly everyone's having a good time, versus the Cube. Like this one time I was chasing a Mei and Mercy, and the Mei turns into an ice cube, and all of a sudden the Mercy just dies. It's like, well, it sucks for her. Then the Mei comes out, and she dies because she doesn't have any team left. And I had to, sit around for a couple seconds just staring at this thing, because it's not designed around anybody having fun. Okay, it is funny playing as Bastion, and you see it, you just turn it to a tank form and start shooting it relentlessly, just so I can hopefully imagine the Mei player crying at their computer, but that's in spite of the design, not because of it. D tier. Her ult is also just one of the most irritating things. Take all the bad stuff about her primary, including no aiming, slowing people down, and add in the fact that you throw it so you don't even have to risk that much to get in position, and the worst of all, freezing people completely solid. Like, if they don't have a negating ability that just makes the ult do nothing, being frozen is just another time the devs thought, hey, what if Mei is on the battlefield and people don't get to play the game? Staring at the screen is not fun. It's only a first-person shooter because the first person I'm going to shoot is my... It stops the action, reduces the skill needed for you and your teammates even more, and it's really just a non-interactive experience for everybody involved. F tier. To be honest, I don't want to punish Mei players, I don't want to bash her for existing, I want everybody, including people who play Mei, to have a fun, interactive, skill-building experience. As it stands though, Mei consistently slows the game, stops the game from being played, and makes fights less impactful for you, your enemies, and your teammates. It just sucks. So how do we fix this? I'm going to go over a set of minor tweaks that are like within the realm of things that could actually happen, and then a total rework, which would be much more fun, but is, definitely not going to happen or anything close to it. And I'm not going to give hard numbers. I'm sure the Overwatch team has a lot of info on the impact of abilities, and I'm sure some of these suggestions would suck, but I'd love to hear more suggestions that address the same concerns. So first, tweaks that are in the realm of something that could be implemented. For the primary fire, I think we could speed the stream up a bit, making aiming a bit more important and reward that skill, and this would be a buff. Once again, I don't hate Mei players. For the secondary effect, make the slowing effect build up over time, kind of like Afterburn, so those first initial seconds are really important to determine how much you get screwed over this fight. This can even build up to be stronger so that, it could be punishing against players who don't react right, but for those who do, they're able to use their movement to their full ability. For the walls, and honestly this is my greatest request, please let teammates break walls. I beg, I plead, I humbly doth request you let me do something about this stupid effect. Ideally, let teammates destroy it at 4 times damage or something. If you're worried about accidental destruction, you could even make it so the damage on the wall builds up, but then if you stop, it reverts. So, you could pop it in front of your Bastion. They can choose, do I destroy the wall? Do I enjoy the cover? It makes meaningful choices that let your team influence the effectiveness of the structure, which is, another buff. For the healing, it would take a lot to make this work, but at least don't let her cap or stall objectives while using it. That would go a long way to making it seem much less like a Professor Wen type ability of just stop the game, move the objective, and no one gets to play. For the ult, kinda like the heal, I think it needs more work, but for right now, assuming we can't rehaul it entirely, considering all the generous buffs that I keep giving, just increase the charge time so it happens less in games. That would be lovely. Now, on to the more well-out reworks. Not that Blizzard would take any of my rework suggestions, but these would definitely be way more out there, but are fun to imagine and to think about how character design could impact someone in-game. Her new primary fire is your secondary fire. I think if you wanted to make it more dynamic, make it so you can charge the projectile. An uncharged one is a small icicle that could travel across map, but if you hold it down, you could get a big one that deals more damage, but has a more limited range. This would give her consistent skill-based damage that, feels earned on both sides. Her old primary is scrapped entirely, and in its place I'm adding a new secondary fire, Ice Burst. When she right-clicks, a small cone in front of her deals about 20 damage, adds an ice effect to enemies for a short time. When they're ice, they move a little slower and take damage over time. Her cooldown is just short enough that she can apply a second ice blast at the end, which increases the damage taken over time and increases the slow effect. She could combo with her primary fire for a quick 1-2-1 punch to take out a large number of heroes with consistency, or continuously punish tanks if not taken out. Making the slow effect that requires skill, persistence, and careful cooldown use rewards skilled Mei players, and the ice over time applies pressure that makes fights more interesting. And for fun, let her put out burning players with it. It would never come up, but it'd be funny to see. For the wall, let teammates break it like I described earlier, and as a bonus, if an enemy is standing too close to the wall when it gets destroyed, it applies a little bit of the ice effect we described earlier. It could be a neat way to punish them for being reckless, or you could even use it as an offensive tool with good team use. It's now more interactive and more interesting and stronger. My idea for the heal is that the ice has a meter displayed both to the Mei and the enemy team. Now, the meter depletes at a natural rate during which Mei is healed until the meter depletes. But during this time, damaging the ice shows cracks, and about half the damage dealt is depleted from the meter. This allows counterplay, but still lets Mei get protection during combat. I could even see the damage absorbed start out very strong and weaken over time. Why not add the effect that damaging the ice causes as ice clouds, to get that freezing thing for punishing players who sit right next to you and shoot, like me as a Bastion. It would be much more interactive, but still let her mitigate damage and heal up in the middle of combat. I still don't want her to be able to cap objectives while doing it, but in this state, there's at least something the enemy team can do about it. Alternately, it could work kind of like Roadhog's, where she can still move around while doing it, and, let it be an ice beam from her little friend that causes her to heal up, but if enemies are too close while she does it, it adds some of that icing slow effect. You could even have this heal nearby teammates a little bit, but any option that makes it more interactive and less of a stall tactic would make it much more interesting for her and the enemy team. Finally, for the ult, let her throw out her friend and it does an ice burst like it does normally, except it just applies some of that icing slow effect we described earlier. But during this time, Mei's secondary fire, her ice burst, the cooldown is significantly reduced. So as soon as she pops her ult, she becomes much more aggressive, and when pushing with her team, can freeze enemies in place if they stack up these charges high enough. Now it allows people to still fight back and not just get stuck doing literally nothing, but would still be very strong and let her have that debuff focused playstyle. In my opinion, letting Mei have a more dynamic playstyle, even without these specific changes, would drastically improve her place in Overwatch. She wouldn't be so frustrating to play with, or against, or as. And although making changes require a lot of balance work, I think it could be done to make her a more interesting character. What changes do you think would help her? Comment, like, all the things. Give me engagement. I need attention. Give me attention. Mommy, I need attention, please.